All right. Hi, it's me, Rule Time. Um, I am joined by a special guest today, Trevor Gureckis, the music composer of Dead Space Remake, as well as some TV projects that we'll, of course, get to talk about. And I also wanted to chat about your debut album that you put out that I actually got the chance to listen to. And I won't talk too much, but I'll let you introduce yourself. How did you get started in the music space?
Well, I'm originally a pianist. So my first career pathway was really to study piano. So I
Wow.
in high school was really set on being a concert pianist. Very committed to practicing, 4 or 5 hours a day, and uh, went
Wow.
to University of Texas at Austin where I got my bachelor's degree in, piano, and at the end of those 4 years, I kinda got into, composing,
Yeah.
and people or met some professors there and was sort of, um, interested in the idea, basically because I was the more, um, introduced to living composers' music. I was playing composers' music, that were alive, and
Right.
the idea of like, "Well, I could maybe do this," kind of entered my mind, and then so then I went to Yale for my school for Yale School of Music in New Haven for my master's, um,
Super impressive, by the way.
thanks. And then I went to there, I came down from New Haven to New York to, intern for Philip Glass for a couple years, and then I was his, then I became his full-time assistant for, 6 years,
Wow.
He's got a very small operation, just like one person.
I think because I was looking at your bio the other day, um, and in one spot it said that I guess you had a ballet and Broadway at one point.
I had a ballet at BAM, which is the Brooklyn Academy of Music, which is it's a really cool, music and, arts venue here, uh,
Wow.
in, 2014. So, yeah, I was doing I always have, an ear or, interest in doing music for stage or, concert hall or anything, but at the same time, I'm always
Yeah.
following where the opportunities to continue to work.
That must have not been too easy either to
Yeah,
do the ballet a part of it. Like
it was
I've
like
been to one.
yeah, like hour long. It was like 50 to an hour long, ballet,
Yeah.
and, uh, and so it was just music and dancers, and the dancers actually had, the musicians were actually on stage, and they actually, were choreographed, and, um, uh,
Oh.
they were actually playing and doing stuff, so they had to memorize the whole thing, and it was a big, production, and that was a lot of fun, and
Did
difficult. So, but it was a great experience.
that's great. Did you get to play in it too, or were you conducting it?
In that case, I was just the composer,
Oh,
the
great.
yeah, the ensemble was called the Nouveau Classical Ensemble, and the music director and, is a fellow composer. Her name is Sugar Vendel, and, she's, my partner. We have a toddler.
Oh. Oh, that's great.
Not where we met, but we collaborated for so many times, and that this is one of those collaborations.
Wow, how amazing! Like, and the other thing too is like going from ballet to like creating like horror music. I mean, that's like night and day,
Yeah,
but still incredible.
again, it's sorta like you see what these things are in front of you. I mean, I think before I started getting into the horror music genre, I
Yeah.
did the, that was, the Goldfinch, which was,
I listened to that. I actually heard your piano theme in
yeah,
that.
I'm actually playing piano in that. So
Yeah.
I'm play piano for all my film scores and stuff, and and even in Dead Space, I'm playing the piano parts for all that stuff.
Yeah, like with Nicole's theme.
Yeah, exactly. Uh,
Yeah,
mm, uh, uh, so
that's great.
that score was a very, piano-driven kind of Hollywood, um, romantic vibe,
Right.
but it led me to meet, M. Night Shyamalan, at he was looking for a composer for a TV show, which was Servant, which has it's a horror-esque world. I mean, it's got, the
Mm,
North Star being weird and offset.
right.
It's still a drama of, very unsettling story. Um, and, uh, and there's lots of weird sounds and weird circumstances.
Yeah.
And and in that case, I ended up picking up violin, uh, to cover some of those sonic worlds.
Wow.
Trained, I took a couple lessons, but it was not like it was just enough to get me, tremolos and, you know,
How and I watched the first season of that show too, by the way. I'll be honest, I haven't seen past that point, which, I feel horrible saying because definitely feel like I should have after the first season. But, yeah, like, even just listening watching that show was incredible, and I think it's impressive, by the way, that you got to work with, like, this legendary director.
yeah, and that's to do so because
Yeah.
it was and he's great, and I worked with him on that show for 4 seasons, which we finished, so it's completed now and, finished this year, and
Wow.
and a movie that he did called Old,
Watched
was
that yesterday, by the
yeah,
way.
very strange movie, that
Love
he
it.
the pandemic kind of like right in the middle of it, um,
Yeah.
and it's a very different score, very, like, percussive and, brass heavy and, has some of the you know, um, solo string stuff that I was always interested in bringing out, for sure, and definitely has a lot of, like, horror qualities, but,
Yeah.
yeah, it has this, like, tribal, drums and stuff that was fun to do, and so I recorded that, remotely, in Budapest, and so we did that.
Wow, that is like, and did you ever get to be on the sets, as you were working on the music?
For this no, not for this, um, so they filmed that movie in, Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
Uh, it was, like, at the height of COVID, so, New Yorkers were pretty much locked down. But
Yes.
I figured out how to go to the movie. I guess he got bored. Uh, um, but, uh, yeah, but, there's a whole there's, bunch of great orchestras in Europe that,
Yeah.
record, video games and TV and film projects remotely. So they have great setups to play back what you're recording. Conductors are great at translating and getting sounds that you need and all that kind of stuff. So if you just, set up dates and work with them, and you can do it without needing to be there.
That's
Um,
incredible. That's incredible. Well, and the thing I wanted to ask you too is, like, how was it working with M. Night Shyamalan? I'm sure you had, like, a lot of meetings with him. So I'm
yeah,
kinda wondering, like, especially on Survey, I remember certain parts where it was like, there were terrifying moments, but you also had somber moments too. And in Old too, there was also moments where there was family moments.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I think at the heart of all of his movies, even though that people kind of put him in a horror genre or a thriller or something, is
Yeah,
telling a story that's about family or you know something that's very relatable. Um, and so I'm always searching for that, and he is too. And he's really great about music, about not wanting too much music or when's the right time to score, or when, what kind of scoring, not too leading, that's why a lot of the music can be when you see it in the show or the movie, it can be very, uh, uh, it's not about being background. It is very descriptive and detailed, but uh, uh, it doesn't, it leaves a lot of room for the actors to have space.
Yeah.
So I've learned a lot from, that kind of like of timing and also just the exploration of sonic worlds, which he was always very keen on finding something that felt new and something that felt distinct. He was, like for Servant, every episode he always kind of wanted there to be, and this is not necessarily, I don't even know if I would achieve this, but he always wanted there to be like this episode to have a sound, and
Yeah.
this was the sound of this episode because there's always kind of a thesis that's going on for per episode,
Mm,
and um, um, and so I would come up with like a different way of doing something with the cello or with an electronic instrument or transforming something in a way, and that would kind of like help me focus on like an idea. So and thematically as well. So he liked things that had melody and in the midst of all this mayhem, because there would also be pieces that are just absolutely made out of control. Like the this last season, the music has been like just crazy,
I
and
can imagine.
as we get to the very end, so like one thing after another. So
Well, and when you wrote the last piece for the show, like, was it a weight off your shoulders? You're like, "Oh, I can finally breathe easy now that the story is told."
well, yeah, it felt like it was a little bit of a recap if you see the show,
Yeah,
little bit of a nod to the beginning of the show in a weird way, musically. Well, that's what I was my plan was. So, uh, that was kind of, like, fun in a way.
that's great.
But, but yeah, it's also we were holding up a lot of stakes. So, like, for 4 seasons, you're holding up all these ideas and these instruments and these strange sounds, and you're just like, "Okay, finally, we can set this scary sounds and, like, relax for
Yeah, you don't have to stress about making the show any longer.
that one is, and put that in the archiving system can begin. I can
Um, well, I wanted to touch on and move to your debut album back in 2019, and I found a specific track that I just find myself listening to over and over again, Sirax from Corche, I think that's how you say the album name. Um, and I was like, I was wondering because that album was something you worked on, I think, before you even got into like composing pieces, but taking kind of going back to it, do you draw a lot of inspiration, or because I can kind of tell like a lot of the tone that you have there kind of carries forward to your music now, and it's fantastic.
yeah, so, I mean, this instrumental album
Yeah.
is sort of uh, a rehashing of some of that ballet work, actually. So
Wow.
so that ensemble it's playing is, both me doing, like, additional electronics and the ensemble that was playing, I did, like, a studio version, so I did, like, had them come in and um, uh, and then I, like, re-edited and, like, tightened up and made it much shorter, cutting
Wow.
some stuff. So, just looking at the album right now, so I
Oh,
remember
it's okay. Take a minute.
yeah. Yeah, the second
That
one.
first track actually does have some electronic in it, like, you can hear it when, when it's kinda, at the beginning, and the beginning portion of Sirax too, it sticks with me.
8 right here, which is like my kind of go-to instrument for especially at that time. Um, so this was like 2019 when I finished this album. Even
Mm,
though I finished writing uh, the ballet thing in like 2014, 2015. So it's and then you just set it aside because you got so many things to work on, and you come back, pick it up. Maybe I'll make it like an electronic thing and then reimagine it. So it like, it was definitely has some like fundamental concepts that are there, that I think are always kind of present in my music at at the moment,
yeah,
harmonically and, rhythmically and, you know, so yeah, it's like
it's great.
it's interesting album. It's very like it has this very classical moments that feel very like string quartet or string, duet,
Yeah.
and that Serac is kinda like a string duet um, plus some of the electronics that I've added on top of it. And that one is sort of a battle, between the, musician, um, who you can't in the original staging of this ballet,
Yeah.
the dancers are paired with, um, uh, a musician, and there are times when the musicians will actually take the musician, like, carefully so they don't destroy their instruments, but they'll, like, pull the bow away from them so that they can't play, or they're doing things that are interrupting their performance. And
Yeah.
it was a way to kind of show the struggles of being a musician in New York and, or anywhere really, because it's, like,
Yeah.
hard hard to, find find, your footing and find your place. So, it's sort of like these, like, these people that were interacting. So, musically, I
Uh,
wrote music that kind of, was sort of explosive. And this piece has a kind of like a tick-tocking of this movement, and then it would like break out
oh.
into this these like crazy duet sections that they would like throw the dancers throw them to the ground, like just by with throwing their elbow or something.
I could kinda tell too, because that first track is like, I kinda feel like it's like a mix between like a really classical song and like a horror track, it
Yeah.
sounds like. It goes back and forth and I'm like, "Okay, so now we're in the good part," and then it picks up.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so that
Like
one.
something horrible happened.
First track is there's that with Sugar Mendel, my partner, or my wife, and
Oh,
we've played that together live sometimes, and a couple times we've performed live doing
wow.
this kind of duo thing. We've always wanted to do this duo of, like, me doing electronics, keyboards and stuff, and she's actually a really great pianist, obviously,
Yeah.
'cause she with hard, um, and, Uh, and that's sort of like one of the, ideas that, that came about from that, so, maybe
It's
one day
amazing.
I'll do another album that will be like a duo album.
I'll be there. I'll be there if you do that. Um, well, I wanna touch on, and move forward and look at the Dead Space Remake game, and my first question I have for it is, how did you get this job? Did it
Yeah.
just show up in your email one day and you're like, "I'll do it?"
Hey, I've always wanted to do video games, like, for I'm a gamer. I've always, been sort of like on my, "How do I do this? How do I get to do this stuff?" But it was
So
actually
cool.
um, um, one of some people at EA and Motive, had seen Servant, and I guess they were looking for um, some of the dramatic elements that they were going to explore in the remake. Maybe they were looking for a composer to kind of fill that new angle that they were going for, or new material that they were going to uh, they were going to expand upon in the remake.
Yeah.
Uh, so that kind of came directly from just sort of um, them seeing that show. I think it was
Wow.
season, so that, and I just had a couple of like Zoom calls with them, and then I was, well, I've played this game, and they were like, oh wow, that's awesome.
They're like, we didn't want you to play the game.
Well, they were super
That's
happy.
great.
I like actually like was aware. I don't
Oh,
know.
that's great.
Yeah.
Were they well, and that's actually leads me into my other question too, because and we talked about this before we got into it a little bit, but with you playing the original game, um and I know you talked about in other interviews as well, but I'm just curious, like with Jason Graves, or yeah, the original composer, um yeah, how was it? Because you said you didn't want to, like, write over anything that he had done, obviously, like to overshadow him. So how was it kind of expanding on that work from where he was?
I mean, I knew that they were going to use some of the music from the original, but they
Yeah.
didn't do any the implementation, so I didn't know how that was all going to play out. But it was more like um, we know that you know the original score is going to be uh, used in this way, or in the opening, some of the opening, or well, a lot of the opening, and then
Yeah, we'll get to that.
and uh, and then um, but we wanted to like um, well, and then there's of course all the new stuff too that they have to fulfill uh, material for. In terms of like being um, like in the style of Dead Space, which was established by Jason Graves, who wrote the
Yeah.
score for this one. So that was a consideration that was like was we would talk about in a way that was with and this is the audio director, music director, and myself, and sort of like this is feel Dead Space enough, when reviewing like some of my music, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, needs to have more energy, or needs to have more whatever. And there are some like elements to what Jason was doing with Dead
Yeah.
Space that's sort of built from like Penderecki, and like the score to like Alien and
Oh,
Alien,
I was hoping you'd say that.
so like Jerry Goldsmith and James Horner, um, that I think that are like part of the Alien, like part of the space horror genre. Um, uh,
Right.
like not to detract from any of his work, but it's just to say that's the kind of like the dialect of like where these kind of like shock horror chords come from, So
Right.
that, and then like aleatoric writing, Penderecki or Ludoslavski, like Polish composers of the late 20th century Polish composers, um,
Yeah.
uh, would write in this way, and I was really familiar with that kind of music. I didn't write like necessarily write in that style of music, but I knew what that was and how to do it. So when I'm, hearing
Yeah.
Jason's score, I kind of knew by hearing it, like, oh, that's that kind of like the strings are all going, yeah, sucks,
Really, like, yeah, really creepy.
exactly. So, and that's what the score, my score looks like too. It's like kind of has that, I never had a score for what Dead Space One, or
Yeah.
I didn't know how his score looked like or anything, but just by listening, I could tell like what was
What do you
going
say?
on in terms of like that. Now it's just that's just to get us to, like, the base level of, like, it sounds, like it fits in the world of Dead Space, but they also wanted it to be, you know, um, like, they, uh they had all these narrative objectives that were very important across the game on a long scale. Um, um,
Yeah.
and in doing so, I had a lot of other things I needed to keep track of, like a lot of things that I was doing with electronics, and then I brought in like some of my solo uh, violin and cello playing as my kind of like more intimate connection with Isaac on his journey now, now that he's speaking I
Which
don't know.
was a great change, by the way.
Yeah,
Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt.
Like all those, there's so many changes that were happening.
Yeah.
Uh, Visually, like the heart rates going on, all this just like you're being bombarded with a lot of new stuff.
His
Uh,
breathing too, like when he's running.
so and so my new contribution was sort of like with to be within the Dead Space language. And then also come up with, like, where I fit with that, and that's sort of, like, in my, stylistically, and how I perform my instruments or how I get the orchestra to perform, uh, uh, and, orchestrate out that stuff.
That's great. That is wonderful. I did not mention it at the start, and I told you before we started I was going to say it, but you and I are going to talk some spoilers as far as Dead Space Remake goes. um, so I'm curious because I pulled up his original score the other day, and then because he has a track on there called the Leviathan, which is an awesome boss in the game. Um, but I noticed his track was like I think it was like 2 minutes 30 seconds, and yours is like 4 minutes. But also too that Leviathan boss fight changed because originally you had to like shoot it in like this turret arcadey section off
Mm,
of the side of the ship, and now it's more of like
mhm. They really
yeah. How did it feel like kinda getting into that and being like, "Oh, they're totally changing, like, that entire boss fight now."
well, I
Well,
know
I wouldn't say change, by the way.
yeah.
They
Well,
improved on.
favorite part of the game. The whole arcade thing.
Yeah, everyone that's everyone's, main thing. I remember when I was talking about it before, and I won't go too in depth because, of course, I want you to talk about it, but, yeah, everybody just does not like that turret section.
Yeah, the thing, yeah. And then the way it works now is it's kind of like a halfway thing, right? Because when you go up to the turret, you kinda, like, control it, and then you lock on, and then you go to the next one, and uh,
Yeah. With, like, the air pockets on the side that you have to fly to.
yeah, but kind of like it's a little bit the concept works a little better in terms of the engineer concept, which I think they worked really hard on. I wasn't involved in any of this conversation. I'm just like a composer dude off the corner, but so I'm just now experiencing the game, back when it came out uh,
Yeah,
January, end of January. But the uh, but yeah, it makes like the whole engineering element of Isaac uh, his role, I do feel has been elevated in the remake. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, they wanted the so once we started going through and establishing, okay, we need um, um, some like
like
big ideas, right? So big ideas being like, oh, what is unitology, or what is that's like like music that I had to write. That was like the unitology thing was cue that I wrote was "Make Us Whole," that track. So that
yeah,
was one of the early pieces that I wrote. Um, um, and uh, and then there was an exploration of like, oh, how do we make high intensity music? Because that's very important for this game, obviously.
right.
I experimented with that and struggled trying to get the real high intensity, at the top, like, for, and getting the loop system, which is, like, a really complicated, for me, very complicated thing, and, um, um, then, and then we just sort of had just asset deliveries that they were kind of coming up, and we're like, "Well, we're gonna, go and try and do a new thing for the Leviathan," so that's, like, on our list of cues to, replace. So, uh,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, I'm not really sure, like, creatively, I mean, I didn't replace, like, every, boss situation, I don't think, but there's, like, Leviathan and Hunter and, Hive Mind, obviously,
Right.
uh, and, um,
All awesome bosses, by the way, throughout the game.
thanks, and and there's some others, and there were others that were, like, created off of things that I made as well, because there's a lot of the implementation had to be done with music editing
Mm.
after the fact, which was, like, interesting to hear, as I was playing the game. I was like, "Oh, they're, like, combining this thing with that thing."
Right. Yeah, and did you like with bosses and everything and the Leviathan too, did they give you any like concept art to like say like, "Oh, this is what it's gonna look like in the game?"
I think I had for, like, Leviathan, I honestly, I think I had the old, um like, a capture of the old Leviathan, and that was enough for me to kind of, like,
Yeah.
air visually, because if this is for the main Leviathan, battle where
Yeah.
you're throwing the, globs back and stuff, whatever your strategy is, and,
Yeah.
obviously, it turns much bigger, and it's, the scope of it is much larger in the remake, but I think the concept is the same. Um, uh, but, um, but in Leviathan track, I worked on, using drums and stuff and trying to get that across, which was and I had the crazy cello stuff, so cello was in there.
Which sounded amazing.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just curious because at the beginning, like, so there are parts when nothing's happening, but you very subtly hear that sound, like your soundtrack, come through in the background, and I'm just kind of curious, like, were you kind of thinking when you were making that stuff, like, oh, this is what it's going to sound like when they're walking through the ship? I want that tension there, or how did you approach it?
Well, I mean, there is definitely a fair amount of stuff from the original in the kind of, what do I call it, like, general, um, um I mean, it depends on where you are in the game.
Yeah.
Um, uh, but, uh, uh, it's all based on this, like, four-layer system, and, when, uh, lowest intensity, and then getting up to the highest at level 4. And these tracks are all kind of, like, playing simultaneously, so they're kind of kicked off by the system when you walk into a space or, like, walk in a certain place. Uh,
Wow.
and they're supposed to play, um, in a way that you could turn them all the way up, and they complement each other. There's, like, orchestra parts if you have all 3 playing, um, when like, a part 2, where you have, like, a lot of, like, Collegno stuff and, like, high pitched things and all this kind of noise, but you also have, like, brass, like, hits, like, randomly or whatever. So, like, the intensity is high, but there's a lot of space between it. Um,
Oh, I see what you did there. I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
things, like, get less, like, freaky. So, in, like, the kind of general sense of, like, urgency or unsettlingness, it's, like, kind of like the general one, vibe, and,
Yeah.
uh that kinda there's a few pieces that I wrote that kind of music that I didn't know where that was gonna actually go. That was just designed to be, um, just gameplay music for, like, where when you're in between places, in between the main events kinda thing. Uh,
Right.
uh, uh, but, it just has to sound like Dead Space.
I just love exploring the ship, and then all of a sudden, like, the funny thing to me is, like, you see, like, these necromorphs on the ground, right? And they're playing dead, but they're not actually dead, and then they just bounce up, and then the music kicks in at that point.
Right, right,
Um,
right. So, yeah, you have the
yeah.
stinger, which is the thing that will, like, initiate a bunch of, like it'll initiate a bunch of those tracks that are, like, in waiting or something. Uh, those stingers are all, like are put together based off of I may
Yeah.
have made, like, a couple of stingers, but they had to make like, they have, editors teams that, like, made a bunch more, that included things like just sections of me playing cello or some stuff with the violin or whatever. Um,
Wow.
just because there was just so much music that needed to be put together, you
Yeah.
definitely, uh and also I wasn't in doing the actual, what was the task required? What do you actually what does it look like? What do you need? Kind of thing. But,
Right.
yeah, that stuff is funny or
I think, well, I just love coming up on them and, shooting them, and it's like, "You're not dead."
yeah.
Um, well, let me ask you too, because, one of my favorite parts, both in the remake and the original, is the beginning section of the game, and I love that portion where it's like, Hammond tells you, "Hey, go take a look at the ship and see, how everything is." And then all of a sudden the necromorphs attack and Kendra tells you to run. And I'm wondering, like, when you were tasked with kind of putting that section together, at least for the music side, like, what were you thinking about when you were making it?
So that one, I'm trying to recall what piece that was.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, if that was, I don't, so that
Yeah.
the opening sequence goes for a while, and then it goes into like the new main theme that I made.
Yeah.
It goes back into some of the original score, I think. I don't know if it has if well, then it does have some, like, stingers and stuff for, when he, like, hits them, when he picks them up. What's it,
And starts.
yeah.
Yeah, and shows you, you know, Chang
Oh,
or Chen.
so that particular sequence, I didn't score, um, um, specifically, but, it could have been used of something else, though. So I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
I mean, the sequences that I scored, like, to picture or to, like, a rough picture not even picture, but, like, I would get these, like, kind of trifecta of, um, like, a board and maybe a game capture, probably not, but, like, uh, some kind of rough animation and then some, um, motion capture, um and those were things like when, Isaac jumps from, to the Valor, like that sequence.
Oh, love that part.
Yeah, so I scored that sequence. So those cutscene things, they're in this game, there are not that many sequences, but,
Right.
whenever there, like, are clear ones, they were definitely, um I definitely scored them, and I was given an actual movie in which I was able to, like, hit everything. So, like, when, uh, it's for Q, it's called Captain's Nest when Hammond is up and he's, uh, he shoots him out out the
Airlock. Or
yeah,
in the escape pod.
yeah, right, the escape pod, and then they go and they walk over and all that stuff, and then he goes, "You're supposed to go talk to him," and all that yeah, so
Yeah.
or, like, so those kind of, like those sequences or, other and then, of course, all the cold conversations, um, and,
How are those 2, by the way? Like, for the side missions, did you do the sound you did the soundtrack for those too, and
yeah,
how was it kinda
I mean, I haven't myself played all the side mission ones yet, so I haven't run into all of them yet. The first, and then I'm going to go and play this time with all the get all the side
Yeah,
stuff. Um, but yeah, I
they're
do
great, by the way. They add a
the
lot of lore.
piano stuff, uh, piano pieces that I played, which were a lot of them were, asset kind of like asset deliveries in a way, because I would go to the recording session. We had like three big recording sessions across like 18 months or something,
Mm.
and I would do Nicole's theme, and I would just do it like 8 different times, um, just like the first part of it and the second part of it and the whole thing, and then like an improv version of it, and then like, connecting it to this thing, and then they ended up um, uh, using it in different places, it's
Wow.
I'm seeing it more often, how it's being utilized now that I'm playing it, further.
Right. Yeah, and it's incredible too, like, well, again, spoilers for anybody listening, but, the alternate ending to the game, I don't know if you've gotten that yet.
Two I scored 2 different endings, one crazy one. Great, I don't know if yeah, they're both crazy, right?
They are.
Mm, but yeah, one in which, Isaac's on board for making and we had the choir, say, Isaac. So I had a choir, full 16-person choir, and we had them sing a bunch of lyrics, but it wasn't just for this, but I recorded it for our very first session. I recorded every session we had extra time, maybe like an hour, and I
Mhm.
had a list of things I wanted them to do, and one of them was, like, recite a bunch uh, like, lines that were written by the writer, and some of them were like, make a song, but say it, like, creepy, like, so, like, 16 people, someone, like, say it, you know, don't say it together or don't say it like your stand partner.
Don't say a high pitch.
Like, say it quietly and then, whisper it, and then one version which I really liked was them all shouting it like they were like they were the, believers. I don't
How
know
cool.
but so it's like them going like, "Altman be praised," and it's like all these people screaming, "Altman be praised." Over
Altman be hey, the tagline, that should be the slogan for the game itself.
I mean, that, yeah, and then having just a bunch of, young people from, Nashville be like, "Just it's acting, right?"
It's not real.
But, yeah,
I
um,
think the great thing too is that you can hear those whispers as you kinda get closer to the end in particular when you see the marker.
right. Yeah, when you look at the marker, like, you hear all this weird stuff. They really did a great job at,
Yeah.
utilizing or expanding on that, and especially in that section, I'm trying to think what section that is, when you're
Yeah,
moving the marker,
at
the,
the near the end.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
you hear all that my violin playing.
I love that section. Were you going crazy on the cello at that part?
Yeah, yeah,
Or the cello, the violin?
yeah, listening violin stuff, and it's all, like, I have to play with headphones to not wake up my kids, so, like, you know, um, that's what, yeah, it's like a stereo image of these violins going up and down.
I have to ask you too, like, when you first got this, and obviously you couldn't talk about it until they revealed it, like when you finally could talk about it though, how did your friends and family feel when you said, "Hey, I'm working on Dead Space"?
I think it's one of those things that, like, you if someone knows what it is, it's like, "Oh my god, that's crazy." Like, "Yeah, that sounds cool," you know?
Wow, what is that?
Yeah, yeah, what is that? "Oh, that's disturbing."
You're like, "Oh, yeah, like, just a game where you dismember people," you know?
Yeah, so, like, the context, it's like, "Oh, it's a very big game. I used to play it when I used to play it. Like, whatever."
See, if you would've told me, I would've been over the moon.
Yeah, I mean, when I meet people, yeah, I've met people recently, and I told a younger person who was aware of it and knew the whole thing, and was like, "Oh, yeah, I wrote the music for it," and he's like, "Oh my god." Yeah, that was that was, uh, one of those
Cool.
things because usually, fans for movies, like, it's a hard translation of movies and stuff. I don't
Yeah.
'cause I haven't worked on, a movie that has, or show that has, a real fan base. So, it's been fun to see, people,
Yeah.
or interact. Like, sometimes I've been on the Discord channel for, Dead Space, on the Reddit Dispa and,
Yeah.
to, say hi and be like, "I'm playing it too now." And so
That's great. And I have to tell you too, like, as a huge fan of this series, like, you knocked it out of the park. I'm so glad that you were a part of this and managed to, 'cause before this, there hadn't been anything for almost a decade.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean,
Yeah.
I have no idea what the next step is or plans, but I hope that they do have more plans and,
Me too.
hope this is not just it.
Would you come back and work on another game if they offered?
Definitely, yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, uh, I haven't played Dead Space 2. I played,
I was gonna ask you. That was gonna be my next question.
played, my roommate in college played it, and I kinda, played with him by sitting next to him, but like, I wasn't the one playing, and, uh, and it's a really solid game, so I don't feel, as strong, "Oh, this needs, a big redo," but, you
Yeah.
know, if if Motive wants to jump at that, that's, I'm all for it, Motive, so,
They'd be perfect for it.
yeah.
They're already set up for it. Well, and that was my actually, that leads into my other question for you, which is your Zero Gravity track. I have to tell you, the whole soundtrack's amazing. That one's in particular, my favorite.
Oh, cool, cool.
Yeah, how did it feels so floaty is the best way I can describe it, but with a horror vibe to it. So I'm wondering, like, how much fun was that to work on?
Yeah, I mean, so it was my second. I did it twice because I was the first one was, got lukewarm reactions. I had to do it.
Did
"This is good, we'll keep this, try again." You know?
did you have to draw any inspiration from Dead Space 2 since they implemented those mechanics into this?
No, no, I didn't because I actually didn't listen to that score, because I just felt like that was so different in a way, like, they
Yeah,
did so much, you know? I just really focused on, what was in front of me and in terms of, what was needed to be worked on, um, or what they were trying to work on in terms of a remake. Um,
right.
and yeah, and getting this one, it's just like that kind of balance of, the acoustic and the electronic elements, and then that kind of unknown elements with, the winds and the brass chords and those kind of weird things. Um, and then I always have these, tapping stuff on my cello or with the ensemble playing tapping on the cello, uh,
Yeah,
which, um, now that as I play it, it's kinda a cool vibe because when you're in 0 G, you're hearing this kinda, tapping almost like the necromorphs are like floating around there. I don't know. Interesting, but,
The cello just gets really low too,
yeah.
like, as you're floating, and that's what I love. It just sounds so freeing, like, both in terms of when you
Yeah,
first do
yeah, yeah.
it and when you
Yeah,
do
I
it
think
con
that was like, it's definitely an idea to have, like, a real, like, and I have a sub bass, and I have, like, synths that really support the concept of, like, because so much of the other tracks, have, like, a lot of energy and direction and, um, uh,
yeah,
that kind of vibe to them, but, this one's about just getting a sense of, like, sonic, spatial height, so, like, I have, like, my,
yeah.
trumpet, like, on the highest note and then the lowest note, so it feels that you're really, like, covering the spectral space as much
Uh,
as um, uh, so
yeah.
yeah, it's a cool, and it's kind of like a interesting space to return to when you every room that you get to, it's there's you feel it kind of warm up the space or something.
Yeah, and, if it like, the thing
And
oh,
yeah.
sorry to
Yeah.
cut off your thought. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
No, no, I was just thinking like, yeah, then I have, like, the, English horn, which I don't use, like, ever in the score except for this track, which is doing, so it's like I think I'm pretty sure it's in C because, I'm not really a cellist, so I'm just gonna C. And,
It sounds good. You fake it till you make it.
and, uh, and I think it just goes like C minor, E flat minor. I think it's something like that, like some sort of thing, and the and the um, English horn is doing that da-dee, da-dee, da-dee on the yeah. So,
Ye
yeah, but it's an unnerving there's a lot of unnerving elements too that surround.
Well, and the thing too, like, when I hear that track, like, 'cause I've listened to it a bunch, along with, other tracks throughout the Dead Space, remake, um, but I get, like I have that, like and it's just like what you were saying earlier, going back to, like, some of the influences, like, I get that, like, alien vibe out of it.
Uh, yeah.
Do y Yeah, and I'm wondering, like, I don't know, did you play Alien Isolation at all?
I played it a little bit, but I didn't play it enough to, like, know that much about the music, do
Yeah,
you know the score? I have to look that up. But,
yeah.
is that a good score too? So
It did. Yeah, it had a great score, and, like, just hearing it here, it's like I can hear those, like, influences for, like, Alien in it.
uh,
Um, and
yeah,
I
but
think it
kind of music like, that kind of world is like,
yeah.
uh, has that orchestral, um, uh, the loneliness world, and, lonely and scary and all that stuff, which is like space and,
Dead Space. Just
Mhm.
kidding.
and yeah, so, that but having melody and stuff is definitely something that comes from that Jerry Goldsmith and James Horner universe for sure.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, so as far as tracks go, what was the funnest, what was the best track to work on in this game? And what was the most difficult?
Yeah, I feel like I actually really enjoyed working on the Hive Mind track. It was both man, it was also really difficult. Yeah,
Because it goes higher.
it was like nonstop. It was almost like I couldn't it was like, telling some of my other, like, studio mates here,
Yeah.
this I can't this is so long.
It
So
is.
long. It's like how I have to get, like, each level because what I had was a playthrough of, so I had, like, animation, rough animation, no color or anything, so just black and white thing of Isaac like running up, and then the hive mind coming up, and then like twirling around him, and um, uh, and then it jumps into the
Yeah.
game, and then it's a capture of someone playing the game in like some really early format, and they're like little squares, like they didn't animate it all yet, so but the uh, but it was it's definitely enough to get the idea, and um but each time what they would do is they would just put on the screen for me, like A, and then, like, B, or, like, section B, I think, and each
Mm.
time an indicator for me to, like, to bring it up the next intensity, intensity, intensity. It just keeps going and going, and then he's, like, running out the door, so it's like nonstop. Um, so finding ways to make that feel like a restart that's actually more of like like intense, like we've actually picked up and gained momentum was kind of fun to figure out, and did some cool stuff with my cello, and so I
Yeah.
mean that was cool. And by then that was one of the last tracks that I wrote, and so I was utilizing like a lot of the stuff I had recorded with the choir, the previous things. So like I had the choir screaming and stuff, and we didn't have to re-record it because we already recorded them screaming. So there's like yelling. I think they're just yelling ahs or something. And so that I got to use those things, and brass hits that had been recorded already that we had done. So I was able to like utilize stuff, um, kind of like from this like program that I use called Audio Finder, and I just like that I load up all the stuff, stems and stuff that were recorded in the past
Yeah.
uh, 2 sessions, and then I would like bring them in to help kind of like piece it together. So, um, uh,
That's
but I did have to
incredible.
make like the drum stuff, which is not my strength. I always really insecure about drums and driving stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's the classical pianist. but yeah, uh, but we got good players, and we got them to like pound on these huge taiko drums, and
Oh,
that was fun. Yeah.
that and they sound really good too, like, as you're going through that fight. Um, do you find yourself, like, throughout the day, like, you get done with work and everything, and then you get home, maybe you're, like, I don't know, just hanging out, like, do you ever just find yourself, like, going back through your tracks in your head a little bit?
Listening to the score or something, or
Yeah, like, do you ever just go like, "Oh, I think that would work really well." Like, if, going back in your mind, once you get to the end of the day, like, do you ever just say, "Oh, I think that would sound really good?"
oh, oh, well, I mean, the only hard part is I get home, I've got like a kid. But
He
problem is that
creates sounds of his own.
funny thing about him though is that
That's awesome.
he's 2 now, and
Oh,
we were mixing, I think we were mixing Hive Mind, and I, like, had the mixing engineer stop for a second. I was like, what are we listening to?" And it's just me playing, like, my violin and cello or parts, I think,
uh.
and just reminded me of a toddler banging on, and that's exactly what it was.
It does.
And, just like, you know what I mean? Just like, "Gung, gung, 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 gung." So, it my kid really did inspire me.
That's great. D
Child is, like, smacking an instrument. Me doing it, but I was, like, so, dealing with, toddler whatever, like, "Hey,
uh.
Alex, stop banging that, stop doing that," you know? That vibe made it to Dead Space.
Do you ever think, like, when he gets older and starts to, like, starts listening to what you have to say, or you'd say, what you've made
I
here?
think total nerd or something.
I wonder if maybe he'll wanna get into it when he gets older, but
Yeah, I mean, if, video games and, the way how things will change, and I have no I have no idea where things are gonna go in the future for him, for
Great
his
though.
generation, but, and if I'm involved in music and we're not all replaced by AI, and, like, yeah, I mean, like, I think gaming is, like, a cool thing that I'd love for him to be, like, I think it's good for eye-hand coordination. He has his own little, like, uh, Fisher Price controller because he keeps grabbing my Xbox controller.
Oh, he's ready to game.
Getting there. So I'm like, "Why don't you" he plays with that one, and it, like, makes sounds and so, like, plays square and, the game is push the square and they'll hit square or something like.
Did you create the soundtrack for that too, or I'm just kidding?
No, no, I mean, there's that's a business.
Well, I have a couple more questions, and then I have a few fun questions I wanted to ask you
Sure.
as well. Um, when we get to the section where we're first introduced to Dr. Mendez and the hunter, that part's pretty intimidating. But how did you come up with the soundtrack for like? Because Isaac's just frozen there, like as like Dr. Mendez is like walking around us.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you make that track for that scene?
Um, so I'm trying to think, that scene, I don't know if I did a bespoke score for that scene, I don't think I did, but I
Yeah,
did do a new Hunter, soundtrack, so the elements of that would be and if I recall, that's what it's using, um, and that comes up a couple of different times, but it has
mm.
that, like, low cello and then, like, a rise to it, I think it's like a dum, like that sound, that's sort of like the if you were faster, it would be like Jaws or something. That's not in that way, but that's what it is, duh, duh.
Yeah,
But, um, um, yeah, I mean, it
yeah,
was the, idea behind that music um, was was for the hunter. I mean, it was, designed for, the setup for, and I forget what the name of the track is on the sound.
yeah.
I think it might be,
I
um,
might have it too.
is it, the Dead Survive?
Oh, I love that track before Zero Gravity. So good.
Hmm. Yeah, so, yeah, Dead Survive, because he keeps, like, going there.
Regenerating.
So
Yeah.
all these names are from, like, some of the lyrics that the writer of the game, Jo Barry, she
Mhm.
had she had the choir say, and so I decided to, like, rename some of them, the tracks that were named, like, The Hunter, instead of just calling it I call it, something I thought was a little bit more creative and less, like, uh, you know, gave away what the track was related to. Um,
Yeah.
uh, the, yeah, so, I mean, it's in those cases, they would take the elements, like, they would take away all the percussion parts, but leave in, like, that low, cello and bass rise as, like, kind of like the theme, which becomes, the hunter's thing as trying to run
Getting
away, not too much longer after that discussion.
how did you feel the first time you ran into the hunter in the game?
I thought it was cool. I mean, I thought, uh, um, the, I felt like if I had one I could have a criticism, and that would be of
Yeah.
my that I wish I had more music for the hunter material. Felt like I got caught in like a loop somewhere, and I was like hearing it, and I don't know what it was. Um, so I wish that I uh, was able to see some
Huh.
of that scene so that I could like help out or something, and I could
Maybe if they remake the remake.
yeah maybe. But, I think, I've actually, like, I've seen people talk about, lowering the music. This is so weird, but
Mm,
they turn the music off to try the game out without music, which I wanna try for sure, just to hear because I know that stingers
yeah,
get a sense of, like, where the necromorphs come or something, so the intensity, you're just getting, like, attacked suddenly. There's like a
right.
musical figure that's like, "Oh, yeah, there's this necromorph somewhere around me right now. I just heard the music telling me."
I'm
Uh,
gonna have to try. I've never heard that before. I'm gonna have to try that.
Talk about it, as like a cool way of, like, kind of getting so they turn the music all the way off. So there's no
Wow.
yeah, so it's, like, much more dry experience. So I
Yeah,
wanna
seriously. Do you just like comment back and you're like the soundtrack's there for a reason, guys?
I act I feel the music's a little quiet sometimes on my headphones,
Yeah,
but
me too.
it's not just me trying to be like, "Oh, I wanna hear that violinist," 'cause that's not it. It's not about the violinist, but I feel like the balance could sometimes be a little bit maybe it's, speakers, it doesn't have the same thing, but,
Yeah.
uh, but I wanna do both things 'cause, like, I have the music turned up a little bit, relative to the other things, currently, and then, I wanna do a playthrough of no music at all just to have that experience because I think that would be really fun just to have,
That
just to have no warning, you know?
that would be. I think so too. I'm gonna try that now because it actually sounds very interesting.
Yeah,
um wow, well this is I have some more fun questions for you. I might get a little off topic from Dead Space, but yeah, I have some would you rather questions, a few there, and then I also have maybe some random questions I've heard in some interviews that I've heard you talk about here too. So, would you rather be stuck on the Ishimura or on the beach from old?
oh, um, in Ishimura, you kinda have a fighting chance.
True.
Old, you're guaranteed.
To turn old.
Yeah, well, look, wait, I totally forgot the storyline of the movie I scored.
They all go to the beach and they turn old, and then they're trying to figure it out.
But so in the original comic book that it's based on,
Mhm.
everyone dies except for the baby that that so there's a
Oh.
that dies, like, or whatever, um, uh, uh, and it's a French story, so it's a little bit more dark. But yeah, so I think that I mean, I don't know, I don't think I would last, but still, guess I could or I don't know, maybe I'd just try and hide. For some reason, there seems to be people that hide and survive on the Ishimura, so,
Yeah.
possible.
Well, that leads into my second question. Would you rather be like Isaac and have an engineering suit so that way you can explore the ship? Or would you want to be like Hammond and Kendra and give Isaac orders from a nice, cozy room?
Yeah, I know, right? Oh, just I think that's how it works. If you just get to the cozy room, and you can engineer to go kill thousands, hundreds of necromorphs for you, and then you can make it
He just
until
does yeah.
some, very specific moment when you're not gonna
Unless you're Kendra, then you can get to the
yeah,
planet.
Yeah, right. You have to,
um, and uh, and then in previous interviews, one I heard you were a Mass Effect fan. Am I wrong?
yeah, no, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you love about Mass Effect?
I think the whole I mean, it's the whole universe of the first, I mean, the 3 games and Andromeda, it's I mean, it's a great, like to me, it's get to Star Trek level, like, quality story. I mean, it's like an amazing concept and then how the game is executed so well, and the music's amazing, um, and really draws you in uh,
Yeah,
it's, you know, it's a story, yeah, it's just like a really amazing, story of,
it's great.
the
Um,
you know,
which one's your favorite out of them? Out of the three?
I really like,
Well, I'll put Andromeda in there too.
uh, out of the 3,
Out of the four.
I really like, 1 and 3. I guess 1,
Yeah.
1 was a great just established there's so much, I know that when it came out, it was just like a technical mess, but, took a while to get, like, things together, but I was still just entranced. I was like, "Oh," I didn't
Right.
care time. Little reloading screen over and over again.
Yeah.
Uh, still just, like, so taken by by,
Did
uh
you love the planet exploration for the first game? Or
yeah.
the with the rover?
It like, it had, like, the when you go to the planets and then you land there, and then there's basically nothing there, but, like, you could
Yeah.
still like, a little bit of a story, and it still felt, like, very very substantial and,
Well, and compared to the second game where they send probes down to the planet where you didn't get to explore.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, probe. I came in one time and my roommate was playing it. He had just probed the hell out of the place. I was like, "You could go to other planets then."
No, he needed to mine that planet for all its resources.
I know. You just drag your cursor over as you wait for you know?
What did you think of the end? Like a lot of people are very critical of the ending of Mass Effect 3. So like what did you think about that?
What was so funny was that uh, my my
Yeah.
wife, we played the ending together. We finished the ending together,
Oh, that's
and
great.
she's like, "Oh, I couldn't." She was like, "Oh, Shepherd, I figured that out," or something like that. Something, "Oh, yeah." And I was like, "Really?" After, like, 3 games and, like, this it was
She figured out at the end his or her name was Shepherd.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the Shepherd, and the almost biblical.
She didn't get to the Citadel part with Shepard where he's like, "This is my favorite store in the Citadel."
Yeah, yeah, I know, but um, I thought it was I mean, so we had 2 different endings though, right? Because we had to download the second one 'cause, the first ending wasn't everyone was upset about, and then they redid it. I have to rewatch the 3rd one again to see,
Me too.
uh yeah, but I think it's, like, a great game, and I don't know when they're gonna do the
Next one.
4th one, but, uh, that'll be I'm sure.
They
Good
did
good
announce it. They did announce there's another one coming. Would you ever work on a Mass Effect soundtrack?
oh, definitely, definitely.
That would be I would love to hear what you have to do, like, if you ever did get the opportunity. I think and going back to that for a second too, the devs for Dead Space Remake, they didn't want you to make the soundtrack sound like Mass Effect, right? They're like, "We want you to stray away from that," I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely, wait, Dead Space? They were like, yeah, they
Yeah.
didn't that's for Mass Effect? no,
Yeah.
yeah, things they wanted to avoid were Mass Effect and, uh yeah, so because it was just that was too synthy, you know? So sometimes they would pick out things that I had that were s I have some plenty of synths in my music, but, like, if the synth came through too clean and too kind of like, um,
Yeah.
a vibe that was, like, so classic for, like, Mass Effect 1 kind of, um, uh, they would definitely be like, "Whoa, that's too electronic." Um, so yeah,
They would tell you to kinda change it up a little bit.
yeah, yeah. Find something like we'd work on. I'd find something more an organic replacement or something. But then once I was getting the hang of finding the right sound, it wasn't really an issue.
Nice. And also too, like in one of the last interviews that I heard, I did a lot of research before I came in here, obviously. You said that you were playing Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, I'm still playing. It's a long game.
It is a lot. I was curious because when I heard that, I was like, because you said, I think at one part you were like, I put my son to bed and then I go play the game. Um, I was just curious. Did you feel a little guilty making the character creator because it gets pretty nude at that beginning portion?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He doesn't. I mean, like, does he see it?
Yeah, right. Like, were you like, oh god, I hope he doesn't walk in as I'm creating this character?
Right, right. If you're like going in the inventory mode and suddenly like she's not wearing any clothes on herself.
I was
Um,
worried when I was worried about doing myself because I was worried my wife was going to come in as I'm making this character, and it's like she just sees this naked dude.
yeah. Um, uh, no, I mean that game is so crazy. I think I have like 20 hours on it now, and I'm like not even that far. It's amazing how little I've done. I'm just get overwhelmed by. I get a little overwhelmed sometimes. It's like I
Uh,
finish a section and the disaster piece or whatever, and then and then you just get these phone calls, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I gotta turn this off. I mean,
Did
it's
you ever
great.
play?
I mean, it's so, like, incredible. I haven't even left the city yet. I still haven't, like, gone the outskirts and seen, like, all the beauty that I see photos of, like,
Yeah. Did you
you
get past the opening section of the game, like with Jackie and everything?
now you're like, yeah, you end up in the trash or something, right? And yeah, yeah, so I'm past that part, and, we're
Yeah.
in, and then trying to, like and doing all that cool, um video footage, you go in the different layers and the sound, it's so clever, like, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah. Batman did kind of the same. I don't know if you've ever played the Batman games.
Did they do the similar concept?
Kind of, yeah, like where you're kind of like in a space and you have to like solve the crime that's around it. I think I love that stuff. I love it to death. Uh Before Cyberpunk though, did you also play The Witcher at all?
No, no, I haven't played that.
Oh, you should too.
Yeah, I've been people have been recommending that I play that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you should definitely jump into it. And then question for you. What is your favorite horror movie? Or if you don't have a favorite horror movie, what's your favorite movie of all time?
I think my favorite movie of all time is 2001.
Hmm.
Uh,
Stanley Kubrick?
yeah, Stanley Kubrick, 2001. Um, horror movie, um, uh, horror
Yeah.
movie. I really liked, um, Hereditary. Uh,
Great movie.
the movie and the music was just really great, like, great. And the 2 elements are really important to make, like,
Uh,
for so, like, 2001, even though it's not an original score, the music is, like, the 2 of those things together are just amazing. They really, to me, define
Yeah.
space and what the image of what a great description of what even though those composers didn't even write that music for that.
Oh,
Uh,
they didn't? I didn't know that.
yeah, that's Penderecki and Ludus and, Ligeti uh, uh, and but, like, Strauss as well, and yeah, so it's kind of all over the place, but,
Right.
uh, um, it's just a great, perfect, like, vision of sci-fi, you know?
You know what I think of when I think of that the movie Hereditary? And I'm gonna go into a little bit of spoilers for it. That scene with the car where like the girl had, has her head up. Yeah. You know the scene I'm talking about. And then and then the other like near the end where like you just see like the mom in the background.
Yeah. Is she
All
not
all amazing stuff.
up on that ceiling or something?
Yeah. My
Uh,
wife laughed at that part, not because she was thought it was funny, but because she was so scared that like she just couldn't help but laugh.
yeah. Yeah, I think I saw that with, my wife, convinced it's hard to convince her to watch a horror film, but, I think
Yeah.
I like the music's really great, you'll really like it. And it was yeah, and the ending is crazy with the bells and the witching and all that kind of stuff, so
Yeah. That part's incredible. That whole ending section is just incredible. Well, and my last question for second to last question. What are there any music composers in the video game space that maybe you look up to?
I mean, I know well, being like, uh, a fan of, you
Yeah.
know, uh Uh, Mass Effect, I think that, like, I've actually, like, casually talked to him occasionally. Gulick, is really great, and Jack Wall, who did Mass Effect 1 and 2, I think. I don't know if they did 3. Well, I don't think so.
Right.
But I think that Sam worked on, uh, Mass Effect 3, with, another composer. Couldn't mention it.
Wow.
Um, but, um, but yeah, those are my like, but yeah, but Sam is like, yeah, he's so talented and he does like really great, scores, not just
Yeah, I think, well, and I won't get personal for me because this is your interview, but I love Marty O'Donnell's music, who did Halo
yeah,
back
yeah.
in the day. Yeah, he's amazing. And now I can proudly say I think yourself is among that for my favorite video game composers.
I only got 1 though, so
Yeah, and that one killed it for me. That one killed it for me. So
when I get 2, then I can be an official film, video game composer. So,
what video game would you besides Mass Effect, like what would you want to work on video game wise?
um, I mean, I think all of the kind of like sci-fi, or you mean like of a franchise? Um
Franchise wise or genre wise, either one.
Yeah, I mean, I could more if more, um,
Did I ask you a tough question? That might have been hard.
especially because if I think about like franchise, I have to, I don't know, I gotta think about uh, what games are, um,
I could tell you one that I'd like to do. Maybe it'll spark you.
yeah, that,
Resident Evil. I think I would love to work. Like if I ever got the opportunity to work on a Resident Evil game,
yeah,
I'd love to do that.
so yeah, so I've gotta play Resident Evil 4 remake.
That was my next question for you.
I don't have it yet, but, it looks cool when from your looking at your, socials and all the other out there.
Yeah, then the original actually, funny enough, the original Resident Evil 4 actually inspired Dead Space to be
Yeah.
made.
No, I saw some sequences and I was like, "That's like the Dead Space sequence," like elevator sequence or something, something similar.
Yeah,
Um, and, how the whole, like, menu system is kind of similar or, I don't know, maybe not.
took some inspiration from it. Yeah, and the regenerators, and I won't spoil too much for you because you still got to play the game. But like the regenerators in Resident Evil 4, I feel like also inspired the hunters in Dead Space, and they're very similar in that way.
Yeah, right,
The
right,
only difference is that you don't burn, the regenerators with the back of a ship engine um,
right.
at one point. but but yeah, like what would you want to work on next? Like if or like in a future video game if you were to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I always just have, you know, uh and my mind is always a curiosity for a sci-fi game or of something of the like. It doesn't have to be horror, but it like that's always something scary about space anyway. So I think that's um,
Well,
I
no
mean,
one can hear you
part of
scream.
technology and cool uh, and cool visuals and stuff in Dead Space, the remake that
Yeah.
that uh, complement music, so it creates cool imagery, seeing like really interesting geometry and ships and this kind of stuff with like music that's also kind of
Yeah.
um, abstract in a little bit. So I think that's kind of like hence my favorite movie is like 2001. So,
Hey, classic. And that line with Hal and the AI, like, yeah, that's what we're getting to in life. He's not going to open the door.
and he'll give a reason, and it was in a poem.
um, well, then my last question for you here is, what what do you have going on in your life? Like, tell the peeps, like, what's going on next for yourself and what
Um,
they can look out for.
yeah, so I mean, I just finished this TV show last week. Just finished uh, called Crowded Room, and with Tom Holland and
I
written
saw that.
by showrunners Akiva Goldsman, um, who um, who's done a lot of like Picard and stuff. But it's not a sci-fi show. It's like drama uh, drama, thriller. It's kind of hard to put in where it fits, but it's a really interesting show, and I'm excited about it. I think it comes out in June,
Hmm.
uh, and so that was a lot of hard work to get done, and I'm hopefully I don't have anything lined up right now, but hopefully I can take a few days off to like chill.
You need it.
I was like right after Dead Space, it was right under this. So it was like, you know, so this will be maybe I'll have a few days or maybe a week.
Hey, just take a few days to or like a week to play back through some games or
And all day. I would love to do that. Um, yeah, and I'm still working on my company here, Found Objects, which is here in Dumbo.
well, I just really want to thank you so much, Trevor, for this interview, especially for a small creator like myself. Like, you just had so much interesting things that, like, I feel like a lot of people really needed to hear. And I just really want to thank you for allowing me to speak with you today.
Oh, thanks. It was fun. Thanks, David.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye, guys.